Hello and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu, sitting in for Riz Khan. After decades of fighting apartheid, is the African National Congress now guilty of implementing its own brand of discrimination, this time based on class and wealth? 16 years after they brought apartheid to an end, millions of black South Africans still live in shacks, and many are left homeless because of forced evictions by the government. In many ways, it's a somber reminder of life under apartheid when black people were removed from their homes. A new documentary titled Dear Mandela highlights these forced evictions in post-apartheid South Africa.
See, they say the apartheid era is over. Yes, we agree the apartheid is over, but there's a new apartheid system that is operating in South Africa, and that apartheid is between the rich and the poor.
Manje namhlanje nizolala kephi?
Angazi ngempela. Mhlambe kusekuseni ngibonke. Bengizondlala ingubo ngilale khona nazo. Mhlambe bese ngiyacabanga ekseni ngifuna ngenze njani. Ngoba angazi ngempela bengingazi ngizokwenza njani.
So today we ask, is class-based discrimination the new apartheid in South Africa? A reminder, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send us an SMS or email. And of course, we also welcome your phone calls on the show. I'm joined by Dara Kell, one of the co-directors of the film. She's in New York. And also with us, Sbu Zikode, president of the Shack Dwellers Movement. He's also featured in that documentary and joins us from San Francisco. Welcome to the show, to both of you.
Thank you.
Sbu Zikode, let me start with you. This has been called the new apartheid. Apartheid, as we know, was discrimination, legal discrimination based on race and color. But why the new apartheid now?
Well, honest, I must say greetings to all the viewers and to all Abahlali friends, and greeting to you. Well, basically, we find ourselves in South Africa in a very, very disturbing situations where the gap between the poor and the rich is widening, but also not that, and that the state is not taking any measures to cap these widening of gaps. But instead, the state is also playing a major role in continuing the discrimination, the exclusion, and the attack on those who are raising these questions. This is an unfortunate situation in the new South Africa, which we are all disappointed because it is contrary to the works of the many heroes who have fought to end what was known as apartheid in South Africa.
Now, you and your organization, you focused on people who have no homes, people who live in informal settlements, shack dwellers, and we have seen in the past that these shacks were removed by the apartheid government, but it was surprising to see that they're also being moved by the new government in South Africa, the government that came to power after 1994. How did that come about, and why were they moving people away?
Basically, the situation in South Africa is quite disturbing, that if you are poor, it is made crime. So what tends to happen now, there's a tendency of chasing poor people out of the cities. There's a tendency of criminalizing all the efforts of an integrated society where the poor and the shack dwellers also have to be recognized as part of a greater society in our cities. But obviously, when you are poor, there's a trend that someone else would have to think for you, and you do not belong into the city. And obviously, if you are living in the shanty towns, you'll be denied basic services such as water and sanitation. You will not be given electricity. There will be no road access. There will be hardly any refuse collection. And the idea, obviously, is to discourage you and you know, from participating in those cities and able to make a better life. People have a reason why they have to come into the urban centers, you know, for job opportunities, for health care, for education, and so on. But then the very same system that was used in the past by the old regime under apartheid is now being employed by those who are in our government, where really there is no place for the poor in our cities. This is the most unfortunate situation, that we have to face evictions every day, that we have to resist these kind of evictions. It's even worse than what the apartheid government will do. I mean, it was clear that it was under that system, but it is now the very same brothers and sisters, the very same leaders who we have once had confidence.
Okay, let's bring in Dara Kell from New York. Dara, you made this movie, a documentary. You were part of the team that made the movie. It's called Dear Mandela, about the plight facing shack dwellers in South Africa. What is the movie about?
The movie is about young people who are coming together to resist evictions. These are people who live in shacks. They're organizing in the hardest conditions imaginable. And the movie really follows them as they contest this new act called the Slums Act, which was really eroding many of the hard-won constitutional protections against eviction. And they took they took this struggle all the way to the highest court in the country, the Constitutional Court. And so, you know, it follows that court case.
Now, the title of the documentary, Dear Mandela, it implies that you're addressing this to Nelson Mandela. Why would you be addressing it to Nelson Mandela?
Well, Nelson Mandela's legacy is really being battled over at the moment, and these young people in the film are really, you know, questioning what he fought for. And, you know, he spent 27 years in prison, and, you know, they are really seeing their work as continuing his struggle into the next generation.
Dara, you know, South Africa has been in the world spotlight this past year. Of course, it played host to the 2010 World Cup. The whole world was watching South Africa at that time. In your view, how much of this has to do with the fact that South Africa was trying to, you know, if I could put it this way, clean up the cities for the 2010 World Cup?
I think this was very, very connected. I mean, we saw entire shack communities disappearing from the highways mysteriously. I think there was a very, very deliberate attempt to move these poor people out of view of the fans. And, you know, just to hide them from view and, you know, present a picture of South Africa as, you know, world-class cities. And so, you know, if street vendors were pushed away, homes were demolished, people were moved into temporary relocation areas just for the World Cup. And they remain there today.
Well, you mentioned the Slums Act, which was legislation passed by a provincial government in South Africa to make it legal for them to destroy these shacks. That law was challenged in South Africa's Constitutional Court, as you mentioned. We just want to look at another excerpt from your documentary here about that particular incident.
Constitution, housing, section 26. No one may be evicted from their home or have their home demolished without an order of court made after considering all the relevant circumstances. No legislation may permit arbitrary eviction.
Zbu Sikoda, the Constitutional Court ruling, actually they ruled against those shacks being destroyed in that particular area of South Africa. It was around the city of Durban. What was the impact of that ruling as a whole in South Africa?
Well, I must say that it was very important for the shack dwellers movement, Abahlali baseMjondolo, to challenge the constitutionality of the KwaZulu-Natal Elimination and Prevention of Re-Emergence of Slums Act 2007. What tended to happen, obviously, was that more powers was actually given to the municipalities and private landowners to carry out these evictions without the legislative guides of the law. And that tended to undermine the constitution of the country as well as the Housing Act. So when Abahlali challenged it, it was really a move to protect our hard-won democracy and our constitution of the country. And we salute our movement for taking such a step. And I must say that it's been a very good victory for the current generation as well as for the future generation. But then the impact obviously has been very, very positive in securing and in protecting those who were meant to be evicted. But what seems to continue to happen despite this historic victory is that the government, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, Cape Town and Johannesburg, they continue to build what they call as the transit camps, temporary relocation areas or Deacon camp, where actually you'll be forced to move from your own shack to another government-approved shack, that is transit camps, before you can actually relocate to a permanent home. And it is very disappointing that those transit camps really are said to be temporary by their very nature, but you'll find people staying there for years and without being given basic services that they need in order to continue with their life. And obviously, it's an endless stay, and it has become a new development in South Africa. You'll be dumped there and they will forget about you. Now, these transit camps are not legislated. The Slums Act was trying to give legitimacy, and it was trying to legislate these kinds of transit camps, and it is they are often built away from the cities, and they promote more poverty, where the people will no longer be able to have access to job opportunities, to be able to be closer to the areas of active economic activities.
Okay, lots more to talk about, and we'll be taking your calls, but first we're going to take a short break. More of our discussion in a moment. We'll be right back. Stay with us. They were promised a better life, equal rights and peace, but 16 years after apartheid was dismantled in South Africa, nothing has changed for millions of poor blacks who continue to languish in slums. Many of them were forced from their homes. I'm discussing those issues with Dara Kell, co-director of the documentary Dear Mandela, which highlights the forced evictions in post-apartheid South Africa. Zbu Zikode is president of the Shack Dwellers Movement. He joins us from San Francisco. Let's go straight to the phones, and we have a caller from South Africa. This is Romy calling from South Africa. Go ahead with your question.
I would like to raise a question about something that nobody likes to talk about, and that's white South African. We are now a minority of a dominated black government, and our children usually are suffering from discrimination because it's very difficult for them to find jobs, and huge numbers of them are leaving the country. I know what they're talking about blacks, and I know what they're talking about the poor, and I know that this government came with a lot of promises for the majority of the people.
Okay, we get it. Thanks, Rami. Thanks for your call. Let me put that to Zbu Zikode. Zbu, I guess the question is that what the caller was saying there is that this kind of discrimination that you were talking about there goes beyond just housing.
Yes, it is true. I will agree with the caller. It's really, I do not think it's only about color question, although I am not trying to suggest that the color question is and the race issue is no more there. But the reality is that even the majority of the black in South Africa are being excluded. So a new apartheid, obviously, our young people will call the present situation, continue to exclude not only the minority white, but also the majority of the blacks who are living in this shanty town. So what is clear about the current situation is that the few black elites continue to enrich themselves and continue to be a law unto themselves and continue to create wealth, unto themselves. I mean, they have the new policy of the black economic empowerment, and the reality is that it doesn't benefit all the blacks. I mean, we all. I mean, there's at least 2.3 million people who are living in the shacks, mostly blacks. So it is therefore true that it is the class question that we are now facing. Obviously, I am sure that it will be worse when it comes to white minority. It's just that it's not yet too clear that they are being now slowly sidelined from the participation of the country.
Okay. Dara, what is the status of the movie right now, the documentary? Has it been released? And if it has, what kind of response have you had?
It has not been released. We're actually editing it at the moment. It's going to be ready in early next year, and then we'll be sending it out to film festivals and broadcasting it around the world. So we have yet to see what the response is going to be. But we hope that it'll, spark some debate and conversation about these issues.
Absolutely. We've got another caller on the line. This is Alexander from South Africa. Alexander, go ahead.
Good day. I just want to tell you about and just discuss something about the job opportunity. Right now, I'm working in South Africa. I'm a white man, which is working in South Africa for more than 20 years in my company. I'm working in a big company, and the moment I try to get another job or just to apply for another job, I've got a problem from my HR department, And right now the problem is they're telling me, sorry, you're a white man, you cannot apply. We've got right now implementing fair discrimination. In this fair discrimination, a white man cannot apply for the job or any promotion because we must reach about 33% from all the employees. There must be a black people.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sbuza Koda, that raises the whole issue of affirmative action in South Africa, I guess, where white people feel that they are being discriminated against at a time when, in reality, the economy of South Africa is still controlled by white South Africans. They still own 80% of South Africa, don't they?
Well, that is true, but I just want to assure the callers, especially those who are being forced out to, who are unable to find jobs and who are also being chased out because of their color, that it is a cry for all of us. We are with them, and we want to assure that their personality and humanity would have to be respected, and we are there also as a movement to make sure that the color question does not return. But I must also say that to the viewers, obviously, that these are contrary to the teachings and the leadership of the likes of Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, the teachings of Steve Biko. The current government obviously has a different leadership style. Nelson Mandela will talk more of a rainbow nation, of a government of national unity, which we all hold up to. Then it is the responsibility of us as well as the poor to start organizing and identify ourselves. I must say that my organization, Abahlali, would be happy, obviously, to link up with all South Africans who find themselves being excluded, because it's really not more about color. Yes, those few black elites are trying to compensate themselves and obviously pretend that they were the only people who fought for apartheid, therefore they must be compensated, unfortunately.
Okay. Derek Hill, what initially sparked this idea for this documentary on covering people whose homes were being bulldozed and destroyed in the city of Durban in South Africa?
Well, my partner and I actually read about Abahlali Basmjondolo, the Shack Dwellers movement of South Africa, in 2007, and just thought, you know, here were shack dwellers who were organizing and, you know, under a new democracy and fighting many of the same conditions that existed under apartheid. And so we went to Durban and met with Abahlali members, and once we met them, we just knew that this film had to be made. They took us to you know, around a lot of the informal settlements in Durban and showed us that not only the conditions that people were living under, which were life-threatening, but also, you know, people who just had their shacks demolished with no alternative accommodation provided, which was clearly in breach of South Africa's constitution. And you know, just from there, we just knew that this was a story that had to be told.
And I've seen parts of the movie. I've been lucky enough to see it, an advance copy. You had very good access, didn't you?
We did, and we're so honored to have been entrusted with such an important story. We really, you know, we just wanted to delve into the movement, and members of the movement were so open and willing to share their stories, both their suffering, their hardships, but also their courage. You know, we see it as a story of hope, of immense hope for the new South Africa.
Ms. Busikode, we've just received an email here from Uganda. It raises a very interesting, very controversial point. It's from Othin Jeremiah, who writes to us from Uganda, and he says, to counter the growing class gap, could South Africa mimic the land redistribution that occurred in Zimbabwe?
Well, I must say that the issue of land in South Africa is still a big issue, and it is a political issue. It requires all like-minded, you know, to come together, because a lot gets said about land redistribution. And I mean, we believe that the land is a gift from God, and obviously it has to be shared equally to all who live in it. But unfortunately, land has become a commodity that if you do not have money, so you actually have no land. So it is, again, the responsibility of all South Africans and Africans and all those who are excluded and pushed out of this land. And I am afraid that if we would allow that, we would have to find ourselves living in the castle, unfortunately. There are laws which and other policies which are being brought into current situation to kind of try and address land. But you find sometimes, good policies which would be in these papers, but without any wills to put them into action. So I think also it is our responsibility, therefore, to make sure that we all share in the land of our countries.
Let me ask you this. The shack dwellers movement, does it identify itself with any political party in South Africa? And one of the reasons I also asked that question is because in Dara's documentary, we see a scene there where there is a demonstration by ANC supporters against the shack dwellers.
Well, Abahlali is a social movement. It is a non-political social movement dedicated to fight homelessness and to end poverty and homelessness, to protect and promote and advance the interests of the shack dwellers. Obviously, the members of the African National Congress, which is in government today, has actually been attacking our movement. So the protest that you saw on that documentary is obviously a scene in which we have evidence that the members of the ruling party has actually invaded our offices. They have burned down our homes. They have forced us into exile. We have become refugees in our own country, in our own province, in our own city, in our own settlement.
All right, that's where we are going to have to leave it. Sbuzikoda Darakal, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Onas.
And thank you for being with us. Remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows, and you can send us your questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, building bridges. Their countries have been fighting for decades, but now two men from India and Pakistan, armed with nothing more than tennis rackets, are waging a new offensive for peace and reconciliation between the bitter South Asian rivals. Make sure you tune in for that. See you next time.